carpet, and the curse of the Coventrys prove the blessing of the Marches in the way of groceries and gowns. Wealth is certainly a most desirable thing, but poverty has its sunny side, and one of the sweet uses of adversity is the genuine satisfaction which comes from hearty work of head or hand, and to the inspiration of necessity we owe half the wise, beautiful, and useful blessings of the world. Jo enjoyed a taste of this satisfaction, and ceased to envy richer girls, taking great comfort in the knowledge that she could supply her own wants, and need ask no one for a penny. Little notice was taken of her stories, but they found a market, and, encouraged by this fact, she resolved to make a bold stroke for fame and fortune. Having copied her novel for the 4th time, read it to all her confidential friends, and submitted it with fear and trembling to 3 publishers, she at last disposed of it, on condition that she would cut it down 1/3, and omit all the parts which she particularly admired. Now I must either bundle it back into my tin kitchen to mould, pay for printing it myself, or chop it up to suit purchasers, and get what I can for it. Fame is a very good thing to have in the house, but cash is more convenient, so I wish to take the sense of the meeting on this important subject," said Jo, calling a family council. "Don't spoil your book, my girl, for there is more in it than you know, and the idea is well worked out. Let it wait and ripen," was her father's advice. And he practised as he preached, having waited patiently 30 years for fruit of his own to ripen, and being in no haste to gather it even now, when it was sweet and mellow. "It seems to me that Jo will profit more by making the trial than by waiting," said Mrs. March. "Criticism is the best test of such work, for it will show her both unsuspected merits and faults, and help her to do better next time. We are too partial, but the praise and blame of outsiders will prove useful, even if she gets but little money." "Yes," said Jo, knitting her brows, "that's just it. I've been fussing over the thing so long, I really don't know whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. It will be a great help to have cool, impartial persons take a look at it, and tell me what they think of it." "I wouldn't leave out a word of it. You'll spoil it if you do, for the interest of the story is more in the minds than in the actions of the people, and it will all be a muddle if you don't explain as you go on," said Meg, who firmly believed that this book was the most remarkable novel ever written. "But Mr. Allen says, leave out the explanations, make it brief and dramatic, and let the characters tell the story," interrupted Jo, turning to the publisher's note. "Do as he tells you. He knows what will sell, and we don't. Make a good popular book, and get as much money as you can. By and by, when you've got a name, you can afford to digress and have philosophical and metaphysical people in your novels," said Amy, who took a strictly practical view of the subject. "Well," said Jo, laughing, "if my people are philosophical and metaphysical, it isn't my fault, for I know nothing about such things, except what I hear father say sometimes. If I've got some of his wise ideas jumbled up with my romance, so much the better for me. Now, Beth, what do you say?" "I should so like to see it printed soon," was all Beth said, and smiled in saying it. But there was an unconscious emphasis on the last word, and a wistful look in the eyes that never lost their childlike candour, which chilled Jo's heart for a minute with a foreboding fear, and decided her to make her little venture soon. So, with Spartan firmness, the young authoress laid her first-born on the table, and chopped it up as ruthlessly as any ogre, in the hope of pleasing every one. She took every one's advice, and, like the old man and his donkey in the fable, suited nobody. Her father liked the metaphysical streak which had unconsciously got into it, so that was allowed to remain, though she had her doubts about it. Her mother thought that there was a trifle too much description. Out therefore it nearly all came, and with it many necessary links in the story. Meg admired the tragedy, so Jo piled up the agony to suit her, while Amy objected to the fun, and, with the best intentions in life, Jo quenched the sprightly scenes which relieved the sombre character of the story. Then, to complete the ruin, she cut it down 1/3, and confidingly set the poor little romance, like a picked robin, out into the big busy world to try its fate. Well, it was printed, and she got $300 for it, likewise plenty of praise and blame, both so much greater than she expected that she was thrown into a state of bewilderment, from which it took her some time to recover. You said, mother, that criticism would help me. But how can it when it's so contradictory that I don't know whether I've written a promising book or broken all the 10 Commandments?" cried poor Jo, turning over a heap of notices, the perusal of which filled her with pride and joy one minute, wrath and dire dismay the next. "This man says, an exquisite book, full of truth, beauty, and earnestness. All is sweet, pure, and healthy," continued the perplexed authoress. The next, "the theory of the book is bad, full of morbid fancies, spiritualistic ideas, and unnatural characters." Now, as I had no theory of any kind, don't believe in spiritualism, and copied my characters from life, I don't see how this critic can be right. Another says it's one of the best American novels which has appeared for years. I know better than that. And the next asserts that, though it is original and written with a great force and feeling, it is a dangerous book. 'Tisn't. Some make fun of it, some overpraise, and nearly all insist that I had a deep theory to expound, when I only wrote it for the pleasure and the money. I wish I'd printed it whole or not at all, for I do hate to be so misjudged." Her family and friends administered comfort and commendation liberally. Yet it was a hard time for sensitive, high-spirited Jo, who meant so well, and had apparently done so ill. But it did good, for those whose opinion had real value gave her the criticism which is an author's best education, and when the first soreness was over, she could laugh at her poor little book, yet believe in it still, and feel herself the wiser and stronger for the buffeting she had received. "Not being a genius like Keats, it won't kill me," she said stoutly, "and I've got the joke on my side after all, for the parts that were taken straight out of real life are denounced as impossible and absurd, and the scenes that I made up out of my own silly head are pronounced charmingly natural, tender, and true. So I'll comfort myself with that, and when I'm ready, I'll up again and take another." End of chapter 4. Read by Martina, Sydney, Australia.